Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'du fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Yesterday I had mentioned how in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, in the first 5 verses, Allah the Almighty has prophesied the second coming of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the person, according to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's hadith from Sahih Al-Bukhari, who was supposed to come and represent him in the latter days when faith would leave the earth. And the job of this man would be to bring faith back on this world, on this earth. That individual was going to be of Persian descent. And then I went on and presented different prophecies and signs about the advent of this individual. I had concluded yesterday that this individual was none other than the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community in Islam, Syedna Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib Qadiani alayhi salatu wasalam. So today I'm going to start from where I had left off yesterday. The wordings of Rasulullah ﷺ were رَجُلٌ مِنْ هَؤُلَاءِ. He placed his right hand on the shoulder of Salman al-Farisi radiyallahu ta'ala, the Persian companion, and said that from among his people, referring to Persians, that from among Persians, a man will bring Iman back. So, was Syedna Ahmad alayhi salam indeed a Persian? Let's today look into that. The ancestors of the promised Messiah, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib Qadiani alayhi salatu wasalam, came from Samarkand in present-day Uzbekistan. Now this area back in the days was called Mawara'un Nahar. And there are certain traditions, certain narrations that speak of this, that Imam Mahdi will come from an area Mawara'un Nahar. An-Nahar means the river, and Mawara'un Nahar means he will the area which is beyond the river. So it's a certain location marker which is mentioned in ancient maps. Hadith talks about it, or Islamic literature talks about it as well. So Samarkand is in that area which is known as Mawara'un Nahar. There was this individual whose name was Haji Barlas. Actually, let me go one step back. There was an Uzbek leader whose name was, I'm forgetting the name, but this individual had 2 sons. One was known as Taraghale, Amir Taraghale, and his younger brother was Haji Barlas. These were 2 siblings, 2 brothers. And they both had their own dominion. They both had inherited certain lands from their father. So these were very well-to-do people. And they had, significant army with them and whatnot. So when Taraghale passed away, his son Taimur, took hold of the reins of his father's kingdom. This Taimur is that very famous Taimur, or Tamerlane, as history records of him. Urdu में हम कहते हैं Taimur Lang. ये वही हैं. Or this individual was very ferocious. He was a commander, and he conquered many lands. At one point, his dominion stretched all the way to Balochistan and parts of India and whatnot. It also included Central Asia. It included Iran on one side, Afghanistan as well. So you can imagine how vast this person's empire was. So history tells us that with growing influence of Taimur, his uncle, his chacha, Haji Barlas, felt threatened by his nephew and eventually was expelled by his nephew. So Haji Barlas had to leave his area, which was called the land of Kish. And he had to take refuge in a land called Khurasan. Again, there are certain narrations that speak of Mahdi coming from the area of Khurasan. So Haji Barlas stayed in this area for some time, but then eventually he died here after a few years. So now his children were in exile. Their cousin Taimur, he decided to conquer that area as well. But he had a change of heart. He conquered that area, but instead of expelling his cousins from that area all over again, he decided to give that area, the conquered land, to his cousins. So he gave that area to them. After some time, the elder on this side of the family, on the family of Haji Barlas, there was an individual by the name of Mirza Hadi Beg. Mirza Hadi Beg decided that he wants to move back to Samarkand, the original area where the forefathers were from. So he, along with his kinsfolk, decides to go back to Samarkand. But then something happens, we don't know what it was. Something happens and Mirza Hadi Beg decides to pack his bags and leave that area for good. And he starts moving in the direction of India. He, along with 200 individuals that accompanied him, which included women, children, and many attendants or servants that was there for this royal family. This family and these individuals were royalty. They were part of the royal family back in Samarkand, and they were treated as such when they moved to India. So with 200 individuals, Mirza Hadi Beg comes and settles himself along with his family members in a place in India which at that time was just pure jungle. There was nothing there. That area was eventually called Majhi. Majhi means the area where you have lots of cows. India is famous for cows. Cow is even worshipped in India, right? So in this specific area, the population of cows was tremendously large. So because of that, this certain area, which was 60 kos. 60 kos is basically 120 English miles. 120 English miles. Pretty big area. This entire area was called Majhi. Majhi means the area where you have lots of cows. So Mirza Hadi Beg comes and settles here, and the king, the Mughal emperor at that time, allocated this land to Mirza Hadi Beg to settle down his family. The name that Mirza Hadi Beg selects for this area was Islampur, the land of Islam. He calls it Islampur, but the area was also called Majhi. So people started calling it Islampur Majhi. And eventually, after some time, these individuals that had come from outside, they were allowed by the Mughal emperor to have their own riyasat. By now, they had 85 villages that belonged to this dominion. How many villages? 85. I'm just trying to make sure that you guys are paying attention. So 85 villages now belong under this dominion, and nine generations down. So after Mirza Hadi Beg has come, and all of this was happening in 1600s. 1500s, 1600s, thereabout. And then in the year 1716, some generations down, from the progeny of Mirza Hadi Beg, there is this individual. His name is Mirza Faiz Muhammad. So Mirza Faiz Muhammad in the year 1716 is visited by the representative of the Mughal emperor. And he comes and he sees this little riyasat with 85 villages as part of it. And it had 100 scholars and hufaz in the court at that time. the court of Mirza Faiz Muhammad Sahib. It's a pretty big deal. Imagine 100 Hufaz and scholars at that time in one place. So he comes and he sees how brilliant things were being run. So he, on behalf of the Mughal Empire, granted the title of Haft Hazari. Haft Hazari means a man who can now keep an army of 7,000 soldiers at his door. 7,000 soldiers. So these weren't no-name individuals. This was as royal as it can get. Because this area had a very strong presence of religious scholars, eventually another name was given to this area. And the name was Qazi. So the full name became Islampur Qazi Maji. Then with the passage of time, Islampur was dropped and just Qazi Maji. And then after some time, Maji was dropped and just Qazi. And Qazi became Qadi, and then Qadi became Qadian. Qazi means a judge. Qazi, we cannot say Qazis, so the word was Qaziyan. So Qaziyan became Qadian. This is how the name of this area became Qadian. Now, from this point onwards, history moves rather relatively at a faster pace. The great grandfather of the promised Messiah, alayhi salatu wasalam, his name was Mirza Ghulam Muhammad. So Mirza Ghulam Muhammad Sahib, during his time, when Mirza Ghulam Muhammad Sahib was the head of this family still had reign over 85 villages. But things started taking a turn for the worse. The Sikh Raj started to take hold. And they started to take over the entire area. And a point came when all of these villages which belonged to the family of promised Messiah alayhi salam were taken away from them. All of them. Leaving maybe 5 villages with them. Other than that, 80 of these villages the family lost. At that time, there was a Sikh movement known as Rajgadiya. So they came as ascetics and they wanted to enter Qadian. Qadian at that time was a closed off city. It has a city wall, it had gates, and you could only enter through those gates, and it had a bridge, so the city was walled off. So these people wanted to enter, and they were eventually given the permission by the head of the state over there, which was Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib. These people entered, and after some time, they basically started looting and they started destroying things. They basically just took over. They expelled the family of Mirza Ghulam Muhammad Sahib from Qadian. All the men, the women, and the children were expelled from Qadian altogether. At that time, in the central library in Qadian, there were 500 handwritten manuscripts of the Holy Quran. There is a reason why I'm mentioning these little facts. To elaborate the point that Qadian was a city which was looked upon as a spiritual place, a place where religious scholars were trained, a place where religious scholars lived, Hufaz lived, a place where in a single library there were 500 handwritten manuscripts. So it wasn't some no-name place at that time. So Mirza Ghulam Muhammad Sahib is expelled, and he, along with his family, they had to leave that area. Then Mirza Ata Muhammad Sahib. By the way, Mirza Ghulam Muhammad Sahib died in this state in the year 1800. Then comes the grandfather of promised Messiah. The grandfather's name was Mirza Ata Muhammad Sahib. Mirza Ata Muhammad Sahib, by his time, all the property, including all of this property was gone. And it was during this time that Rajgadiya movement had attacked Qadian and they lost everything. And they were in exile now. The year was 1803. In 1803, this exile had taken place. And the grandfather, along with his children, the grandfather of Promised Messiah, along with his children, they took refuge in a state known as Kapurthala. The state of Kapurthala is where they went to take refuge. 11 years later, in 1814, Mirza Ata Muhammad Sahib passes away. The grandfather passes away, leaving the father of Promised Messiah Islam as the head of the family now. And this is how they lived. They lived in exile until the year 1835. Remember the year 1835? I had mentioned the significance of this year yesterday. 1835, Christian Gregorian calendar. Islamic calendar, it is 1250 after Hijrah. And according to the Bikrami calendar, I think the Hindu calendar, I mentioned that number as well yesterday. So the year is 1835. And the king is Ranjit Singh. And his tenure is about to come to an end. Another 3 or 4 years later, Ranjit Singh dies. The Sikh king dies. But before that happens, so in the last 3 or 4 years, Ranjit Singh decides to give back some of the villages to the father of Hazrat Masih Maud Islam. Return some of the villages which originally belonged to this family anyways. So they received 5 villages back. Qadian and 5 villages. That's all they had. And all of this is happening in 1834, 1835. Then comes the year 1849. The British government takes over. British Raj takes over. And they take everything away from them. Even Qadian. They're like, okay, from now on, you're not the heirs of Qadian. You're not the owners of Qadian. You're not the rulers of Qadian. All of this area now is under British Raj, British government. Instead, the British government said that we will give this family a meager allowance, an allowance of 700 rupees at that time. So they said, all you will get is 700 rupees and that will be your allowance. Run your affairs on that. And that's it. That's all you will get. You will not be the rulers of these 5 villages anymore, including that of Qadian. Now let's go back to the year 1835. 1835 is the time frame around which this family receives some respite. They receive some of the villages back, and they're finally able to come back and move back to Qadian, their ancestral home. After, or just about that time frame, that is when Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salam, Syedna Imam Mahdi Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani alayhi salam is born. The year is 1835. The date, to be precise, is 13 February 1835. Before I go further into this subject, let me quickly mention that the parents of Promised Messiah alayhi salam, the father's name was Mirza Ghulam Murtaza Sahib, and the mother's name was Charagh Bibi Saiba. And together this couple had 5 children. The first one was known as Murad Bibi. The eldest was a sister. Her name was Murad Bibi, and she married a man named Mirza Muhammad Beg, who belonged to the city of Hoshiarpur. And it is mentioned that Murad Bibi Saiba was a very righteous person. She used to receive visions and true dreams from Allah the Almighty. So, a religious person in her own right. The second was a boy. His name was Mirza Ghulam Qadir. This boy lived to a long age. Mirza Ghulam Qadir was the older brother of the Promised Messiah Islam. Remember this. After Mirza Ghulam Qadir Sahib, there was another boy who was born, but he died in infancy. We don't know his name. Then twins were born. The first twin was a girl. Her name was Jannat Bibi. And soon after she was born, she passed away in her infancy. Soon after she was born. But along with her, there was a boy who was born, the second of the two twins. This boy was named Ahmad, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. He is the promised Messiah. One allegation that enemies of Ahmadiyya raise against promised Messiah Islam, they say that all the prophets that have come, their name was singular name, like Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or Ibrahim alayhi salam, or Musa alayhi salam, or Ismail alayhi salam, or Adam alayhi salam, or Nuh alayhi salam. They were single names. But Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, these are three names. It's a compound name. So Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, because his name is Mirza and Ghulam and Ahmad, he cannot be a true prophet of God. If you can believe, this is a criteria that they came up with. So let's analyze this. Mirza is the caste, the name of the tribe, if you may call it. The family name is Ghulam. His older brother's name was Ghulam Qadir. His father's name was Ghulam Murtaza. His grandfather's name was Mirza something, as I had mentioned before. So you have the tribe name, the caste, which is Mirza. You have the family name, which is Ghulam. And then you have his own name. His own name was Ahmad. In his family, he was known as Ahmad. He was not known as Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. His name was Ahmad. He was known as Ahmad. His brother was known as Qadir. His father was known as Murtaza. So on and so forth. So we have established that the name of promised Messiah was Ahmad. But let's go with this. What if the name is compound? Can prophets not have compound names? Ismail is a compound name. It's a Hebrew name, and Ismail are two words. When you bring them together, you get Ismail. Means God, and Isma means heard. God has heard the prayer. That's what it means. Ismail. It's a compound name. If a person with a compound name cannot be prophet, why do they believe in Ismail alayhi salam as prophet of God? Isa alayhi salam. They have problem with Mirza Ghulam Ahmad name, right? Because it is compound. What was the name of Jesus Christ in the Holy Quran? Isa ibn Maryam. His name is not Isa. His name is Isa ibn Maryam. This is recorded in Surah An-Nisa. Isa ibn Maryam. Allah mentions this. So, having a compound name is not a criteria to judge somebody's truthfulness or not. Moving forward. Now we come to the birth of the promised Messiah. I already mentioned how many siblings he had. Promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam, in the year 1865 or thereabout, receives a revelation. He was 30 years of age. Pretty young man, I would say. At the age of 30, he receives a revelation, which is very remarkable. The wording of the revelation is, ثَمَانِينَ هَوْلَنَا قَرِيبًا مِنْ ذَلِكَ أَوْ تَزِيدُ عَلَيْهِ سَنِينًا وَتَرَى نَسْلًا بَعِيدًا. This was in Arabic, which meant 80 years. Your age will be 80 years, a few years less, or some years more, and you will live long enough to witness your distant progeny. Promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam lived roughly 43 years more after this revelation was given to him. According to the solar calendar I'm talking about. Promised Messiah receives another revelation, and which elaborates this first one. The words of that revelation is, أَطَالَ اللَّهُ بَقَاءَكَ, meaning Allah will prolong your life. 80 ya us par 5-4 zyada ya 5-4 kam. Your age will be 80, or 5 or 4 more, or 5 or 4 less. Let me put it in terms, easier terms, so that everyone can understand. 80 is the benchmark. And Allah is saying in His Wahi to Promised Messiah Islam that either your age is going to be 80 or 5 more, 85 or 84. And on the lower end, it will be 75 or 76. So the age bracket that we have is between 75 to 85. If Promised Messiah's age was between this window, then the prophecy is fulfilled. The reason I have to mention this is because on social media, some people have been raising this allegation against Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salam. They say Promised Messiah alayhi salam did not live up to this age. They say he didn't even live up to 75. Hence the prophecy was not fulfilled, because the prophecy is very specific. It says between 75 and 85. That's the age which is mentioned. So, when we study the history around the time frame that Promised Messiah was born, there were no historical records. Now when a child is born, you go to the hospital and they register the birth right there and then. And afterwards you receive a birth certificate that says that Faran Rabbani was born in XYZ hospital in that city on that day, and the name of the parents are, XYZ. But back then, this was not the norm. Many a times, children weren't born in hospitals. Hospitals were not that many available anyways. Many a times, children were born in their own homes. And so was the case with Promised Messiah Islam. There is no record of, official record that is, there is no official record of when exactly he was born. It was all verbal. So even Promised Messiah himself did not know the exact year that he was born. He did not know the exact date that he was born on. Is this something unique? No. My grandmother, she passed away in 2012. And she had no idea when she was born. When she had to apply for a governmental ID card or passport eventually, they came up with a generic birthday for her. There might be some individuals sitting here, who may fall in the same category. I know for a fact some individuals in my own family, even among my in-laws, who do not know the year that they were born in. So when it was time for them to get their passports made, they gave a generic date, because they didn't know exactly when they were born. They were born at home and their birth was not registered. The further back you go, that was the norm. That's how in majority of the places, this is how things were. Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was no record of his birth. There were no birth certificates, no birth registration. So nobody knew the year he was born in. That's why in different books you find different estimates of his age. Some say he was 60, some say he was 61, some say 62, some say 63. So how do you establish the age of an individual whose birth record is non-existent? Promised Messiah ﷺ has mentioned something. He mentioned some markers that he had heard about his birth from his own parents. That when he was born, the day was a Friday. Another marker was that Promised Messiah ﷺ, he was told that he was born towards the ending years of Ranjit Singh's reign. Ranjit Singh's reign ended in 1939. So we're looking for a Friday, and we're looking for a Friday before 1939, because it has to happen before that. Then another marker was that his parents had told him that it wasn't just a Friday, it was Friday the 14th. It was Friday the 14th. So now you're looking at Friday the 14th, sometime before 1839. Then Mufti Muhammad Sadiq Sahib, the first Ahmadi missionary and a companion of the promised Messiah, alayhi salatu wasalam, who came to the United States in early 1920s, 1919 or 1920. He says that once the promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam had told him, and he had this written with him, this narration was with him, he says the promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam had told him that when the promised Messiah was born, the Hindu calendar, according to the Hindu calendar, the month was Pagan. Pagan is the name of a Hindu month, according to the Hindu calendar. So now we know the name of the Hindu month. We know the name of the day according to the Islamic calendar. And we know it was 14th. And we know it had to be before 1839. Then there was one more marker. This marker was that promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam in the year promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam in the year 1290 Hijri wrote in one of the writings, he said that 1290 Hijri is the year that he was receiving revelation from Allah the Almighty. And at that time, his age was 40 years of age. So if you go back from 1290, 40 years, you got 1250 according to the Hijri calendar. 1250 according to Hijri calendar, when you convert it to the Christian calendar or the Gregorian calendar, the date comes out to be, or the year comes out to be 1835. But was there a Hindu month? Because remember, all these months, all these calendars, they run independent of each other. So was there a time that all these markers aligned? If there was a time when all these markers aligned, then you know that's the date of birth of the promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam. Here with me, I have a calendar of all the possible timelines where this could have happened. And the research falls on the dot for the month of Shawwal, 14th of Shawwal to be precise, the year 1250, which is 1835. In Christian calendar terms, this turns out to be 13th of February, 1835. And according to the Hindu calendar, the date was the 1st of Pagan, the month of Pagan, the year 1891 Bikrami. This is when all the calendars align, and this is that date, 13th of February 1835. Why is 1835 important? I mentioned that in yesterday's lecture. Anyone who wasn't here yesterday or who hasn't watched yesterday's dars, you can watch that, and from there you'll know why 1835. Because that is what was prophesied. The hadith of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam stated that the time of Imam Mahdi will be from 1250 after Hijrah onwards. And 1250 is the exact year after Hijrah that promised Messiah was born. Here, a couple of points I quickly want to address today. When the promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam was born as the last child of his parents, of 5 children, he was the 5th one. So in one of his books, which is titled, I believe, Tiryakul Kulub. And in his book Tiryakul Kulub, he says, and I read, मेरे साथ एक लड़की पैदा हुई थी जिसका नाम जन्नत था, और पहले वो लड़की पेट में से निकली थी और बाद उसके मैं निकला था, और मेरे बाद मेरे वालिदैन के घर में और कोई लड़की या लड़का नहीं हुआ और मैं उनके लिए khātamul awlād था. That I was born as a twin, and before me came my sister whose name was Jannat, and afterwards I came, and then no children were born to my parents, and thereby I became khātamul awlād. I became the last of their progeny, or the last of their children. So the non-Ahmadis take this reference and they say, look, promised Messiah himself uses the word khātamul awlād. Khatam is mentioned, and he says he's the final one. So obviously khātamul nabiyyin must also mean the final prophet. That's the argument which is being made. So what's the answer for this? The answer is, this term that promised Messiah is using here, he's not using the Arabic term, he's using the Urdu term. The same term is also used in Urdu, but when it comes to Urdu, it changes the meaning altogether. In Urdu, the meaning of khatam is to finish something off. When you're eating food, you say, finish your food. I say to my kid, finish your food, apna khana khatam karo. It means to finish it off. In Arabic, the word khatam is not used to finish something, it means to put a seal on something, stamp on something. You're putting a stamp on something. Khatamallahu ala qulubihim. Allah Ta'ala has put a stamp on the hearts. Not that Allah Ta'ala has finished the hearts. That doesn't make sense. So the word khatam or khatam in Arabic means completely different as compared to Urdu language. Promised Messiah alayhi salam is using this word in the Urdu context. And even if somebody says, no, we're not going to buy this, it's a stretch, fine, let's take the meaning last. In what way was he the last of the child, or of the children? Were no more children born into that family after promised Messiah was born? His siblings, none of them had any child. उनकी जो बहन भाई थे उनमें से किसी की नस्ल नहीं चली आगे. But that family continued through the children of promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam. As if Allah Ta'ala closed all the doors and opened only the door of one child, which was Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani alayhi salatu himself. Same can be applied to the concept of khātamul nabiyyin, that now no more prophets can come from outside. If any prophet can only come from the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in today's verse, I have answered 3 allegations. That a prophet's name cannot be compounding. I answered that. The other was that they raised this allegation that the promised Messiah ﷺ's age was not even 75. So when you do the counting, this is where I wrap up. When you do the counting from 13th of February or 14th of Shawwal, 1250 after Hijrah, until he passed away on 26th of May 1908. This, according to Islamic or lunar calendar, becomes 75 and a half years. According to the lunar calendar. Lunar calendar is different than the solar calendar, because lunar calendar has 10 less days. That's why each year Ramadan moves back by 10 days. So every 1 century, 100 years, solar 100 years, is 103 lunar years. Everybody is following? Okay. So the age according to the lunar calendar of the promised Messiah ﷺ comes out to be 75.5 years. Exactly 75.5 years. What was the window? 75 to 85. His age falls exactly in that. So today we have learned the answers to 3 allegations. We have learned about the history of promised Messiah's family, where they came from, how they came from the area known as Mawara Nahar, Samarkand, Khurasan. All these terms are mentioned in Ahadith. And the reason I mentioned this today is so that everybody understands that all the check boxes are being marked off in the case of promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Inshallah ta'ala, I'll present about the early life of promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam in tomorrow's dars. Muhammadur Rasulullah.